Welcome back, everybody, to Niners Now. I'm your host, Brady Grustas, at Grustas Brady on X. You can follow me there. And today, we've got all sorts of injury updates for the 49ers and the Buccaneers ahead of their matchup this Sunday. And of course, stick around until later in the show because Kyle Shanahan has weighed in on some of the trade discussions happening online. But of course, before we begin, go ahead and subscribe down below, leave a like, leave a comment, and let's get into it. So, to start off the show today, the Niners officially announced the winner of that final practice squad spot. It's defensive tackle Bruce Hector. Hector spent some time with the Niners this summer and was a fourth-string defensive tackle for pretty much all of training camp. Hector's got experience playing under Robert Saleh. They were together with the Jets, and now he's back in the building. This move was probably motivated by all the question marks at defensive tackle right now. You've got Jordan Elliott healthy, but Kalia Davis had hand surgery this week. Alfred Collins and CJ West were dinged up against the Rams. And now you've got Kevin Givens potentially making his return to the 49ers. Let's get into all the injury news now, and we'll start with Givens, actually. This was the surprise news of the day on Wednesday. The Niners on Wednesday officially opened Givens' practice window. He's been out since training camp after suffering a pectoral injury, which is usually a pretty long-term thing. We haven't heard much of anything about Givens since that injury, but he was limited in practice on Wednesday. So hopefully Givens can come back because he is better than most of the interior pass rushers on this team. And the Niners could use pass rush in any form right now. So Givens being back is definitely good news, which is nice because there is not a whole lot of other good news after Givens. The 49ers had 18 players on their Week 6 injury report. 18. That is absolutely insane. If you want to put this in context, the Buccaneers are one of the more beat up teams in the NFL, right? They're not exactly healthy by any means. The Buccaneers had 9 players on their injury report. The Niners are double that. That's ridiculous to me. Notably, Kalia Davis was limited in practice, and that's actually pretty big. Seems like Davis might have a chance to play this week. We saw CJ West miss a game with a thumb injury before coming back with a club on, and Davis was wearing a club at Wednesday's practice. We'll see if he's ready to go by Sunday, and those few extra days of rest were enough. Malik Mustafa was a full participant, and he said that he expects to play on Sunday, which is huge news. We need Mustafa back there badly to cover Emeka Egbuka and the like. And the players who did not practice due to injury were Jawan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall, Brock Purdy, Robert Beal, Alfred Collins, Jordan Watkins, and Yetur Gross-Matos. Now, Kyle Shanahan said on Wednesday that there's no discussion about putting Brock on injured reserve, which is also good news. Seems like he'll be back, before week 10-ish. He'll be back by presumably the trade deadline. Although it does seem like this week it'll be the B team once again on Sunday, especially on offense. Both Jennings and Pearsall missing this practice, not ideal. They were both held out of week 5, taking full advantage of the mini bye week, and yet they're still not healthy. With Jennings, it's tough to expect much because he had like a shoulder injury and a calf and an ankle and a rib all over the span of a couple weeks. So he's clearly beat up. You might just have to put Jennings on ice for, 4 weeks or so. But with Ricky, that knee injury is starting to worry me a bit. It was presented as just like a bruise or a tweak or something minor, but here we are nearly 2 weeks out from when he injured it, and he's still not even practicing. I'm certainly pretty concerned about it. I wouldn't be totally surprised if this is worse than we've been led to believe, and Ricky might be a surprise IR candidate. Now, the Niners are beat up, but the Buccaneers are not exactly healthy either. They played last week without star receiver Mike Evans, star running back Bucky Irving, starting cornerback Jamel Dean, and their starting rookie cornerback Benjamin Morrison. Evans, Irving, and Morrison were all out of Wednesday's practice for Tampa Bay, along with two more starters in Chris Godwin and Zion McCollum. McCollum was a breakout star for the Buccaneers at cornerback. He's their best cornerback by far, and he was spotted on Wednesday with his arm in a sling, so does not seem like he's got a great chance to play on Sunday. But, we'll have to see. Things change all the time. With all these cornerback injuries, we might be seeing the Niners' 4th, 5th, maybe 6th wide receiver against the Buccaneers' 4th, 5th, maybe 6th cornerback. Should be one heck of a matchup on Sunday. The Buccaneers will also be without their newly paid right tackle Luke Gadecki and former second-round pick Cody Mauch at right guard. And in their place, they've been starting Luke Haggard and Charlie Heck. Not great for the Buccaneers O-line. But you know what? They were still able to put up 38 points on Seattle last week, so good for them. This Buccaneers team, they're a lot like the Niners in that they are constantly injured, and it just really hasn't mattered so far this year. Buccaneers are also 4-1, and they've been winning games. I think every single game they've played has had a game-winning score in the final minute of the fourth quarter. I'm pretty sure that's accurate, and if it's not every game, it's every win. The Buccaneers have been leaning a lot on backups, just like the Niners have so far this year. Guys like Rashad White, Sterling Shepard, Tej Johnson, Jacob Parrish, Kindle Vildor, all of these guys are playing excessive snaps for the Buccaneers. And Vildor, in case you don't remember, he was actually on the other end of the catch 4, a.k.a. the Brandon Ayuk Ladybug catch in the 2023 NFC Championship game. So in my book, Kindle Vildor is a Niner legend. Very excited to hopefully watch him play on Sunday. Hopefully the Niners can take advantage of that. Now, late Wednesday night, we saw another big NFL trade go down with the Jaguars and Browns swapping cornerbacks. The Jaguars sent their former CB1, Tyson Campbell, plus a 7th-round pick to Cleveland in exchange for Greg Newsome and a 6th-round pick. Newsome was a guy who was often connected to the Niners as a trade target, but that sort of activity has cooled way down recently. But Newsome has remained an interesting trade candidate across the league, and the Jaguars jumped at the opportunity to bring him in. Will we see the Niners make a move like this? Well, in his Wednesday press conference, Kyle Shanahan shared some pretty candid thoughts on the Niners season so far and if the team was planning on making an aggressive trade. Kyle was asked specifically if the record increases the likelihood that a trade would be made. And he replied, quote, "Not really. What increases my interest is who is the guy who can absolutely help us get better this year without hurting us next year. And you balance both of those things out. But there's got to be a guy available. And sometimes it's two different things. Sometimes there's only one guy who can help this year. And sometimes there isn't a guy available who's like that." End quote. That's a pretty diplomatic answer from Shanahan. But the key words to me are the first two that he said. Not really. Kyle does not see this season as a unique opportunity to compete for a Super Bowl. Now, he might still think that they can do it, but this is not like one of those special type of seasons, right? And while I don't necessarily agree with that, I do understand his point of view. The injuries this season have been never-ending. It's absurd. It is week 6, right? It's still very early in the season. If the Niners go out and trade for like a high-priced rental like Trey Hendrickson, and they give up a 2nd-round pick to do it, and then the very next game, Christian McCaffrey or Fred Warner go down for the entire year, then the season's lost anyways, right? And if you made this big move all for nothing, then losing out on some draft picks who could be valuable contributors to the youth movement is a big deal, right? It's a tricky balance, and it's the reason why trades don't usually happen until right at the deadline. You don't want to jump the shark, so to speak, on a trade like this. Kyle was also asked at his press conference if he felt like this year was similar to 2019 when they made an in-season trade for wide receiver Emmanuel Sanders. And Kyle said, quote, "No, I don't feel at all like that. I think at that time we had a Super Bowl defense that was as good as anyone in the league and had probably been for like 10 years, and it was pretty obvious. I thought some of the receivers we were depending on weren't there, and we were playing some rookies, and we thought we needed to add another guy." End quote. And now I do agree with Shanahan on this point. The 2025 49ers are not one player away from making a Super Bowl run. There are lots of things that need improving, even at 4-1. The run game has been really poor, the pass rush is non-existent, and the coverage at the safety position is not great, at least not yet. There's no one player who can fix all of those problems, but what do you think? Do you think the Niners will make a trade anyways, or do you think Kyle's comments mean that the Niners won't be aggressive this year? Let me know in the comments down below. Now, one thing that could bridge the gap from Kyle's point of view to a potential 49ers trade is if there's someone available that fits into this team's long-term plans, or at least beyond this year, right? Let's ignore the rentals, the one-year deals, the expensive veterans. Let's push all those aside. Are there any players on cheap rookie contracts around the league who the 49ers could make a swing for? I've got 3 that I'd like to bring up today. First, Brad Graham on Twitter, excellent 49ers creator, shout out to him. He posted about a potential option that really intrigues me. It's Myles Murphy from the Cincinnati Bengals. Murphy was a former first-round pick out of Clemson, and he's had a very hard time making an impact. He's only got 4.5 sacks in his 3-year career, and he's only made 1 start since being drafted. He hasn't been able to find a role in one of the worst defenses in the NFL in that time period. But Murphy still does have 2 years left on his rookie contract, and it's not even including the 5th-year option. Murphy would not be expensive. He's making about $4 million per year, but unfortunately, he's very unproven. This would be another raw, high-potential edge rusher who has yet to put together that pass rush. So while he does have all the upside, he's got size, he's got length, he's got even the strength that you would ask for, you'd probably be trading a 6th or a 7th round pick for him. He would not be a starter. He'd probably be the 4th edge rusher on the squad without Bosa, and the 5th with him healthy. So while it would be a low risk move, the reward might not be all that high either. Although I should say, I did like Myles Murphy coming out of Clemson, and I think he might have some more juice left in his tank. That Cincinnati defense, not a lot of guys can succeed in that sort of system. And what about a weird situation that we briefly encountered this offseason? All summer long, the Raiders were dealing with a competition at center of all places. Last year, they played their second-round rookie Jackson Powers-Johnson there. He was a top 50 pick who really impressed in a pretty dismal season all around for the Raiders. But with Pete Carroll and the new staff taking over, JPJ has been moved to right guard, swapping places with Jordan Meredith. Once JPJ moved to guard, he was then put into a competition with Alex Kappa, who was one of the worst guards in the NFL last year. JPJ was a really good center prospect coming out of Oregon in 2024, and he was a guy that a lot of Niner fans had circled for them to take with that number 31 overall pick. Now, of course, they went with Ricky Pearsall instead, but what if they get the best of both worlds at the trade deadline? The Niners could definitely use the help on the interior of the O-line. JPJ would probably play guard here in San Francisco, at least for this year, but there is no solidified succession plan after Jake Brendel. And even if JPJ doesn't play a single snap at center, he would still likely be an upgrade at guard over Connor Colby. It would be really, really weird for a starting offensive lineman to be traded mid-season, especially one who was not only drafted high, but was playing well. But neither Pete Carroll nor the general manager, John Spytek, were involved with taking Jackson Powers-Johnson in the draft in 2024. This is a completely new regime, and it already seems like JPJ has kind of been on the outside looking in. Spytek and Carroll did feel good enough about another guard, Caleb Rogers, to draft him in the top 100. So I wonder if by the deadline, the Raiders might want to see their guy in Caleb Rogers play at guard, and maybe they end up trading JPJ away. If they do go down that road, the Niners should be all over this. JPJ is in the 2nd year of his 4-year rookie deal. He's making under $3 million this year, and he's 22 years old. This could absolutely be the chance to score a future mainstay on the offensive line. And I wonder if like a 4th round pick would maybe get this move done. Now last, I couldn't choose between these two guys for the last spot, so I'm going to talk about them both. They're both actually Cleveland Browns. But let's start with the defensive tackle, Mike Hall Jr. Hall was a smaller, quicker defensive tackle coming out of Ohio State who hung his hat on pass rush and explosiveness. He would play like he gets shot out of a cannon every snap. It was very fun to watch. But here's the issue. We haven't seen that at all in his year and a half in the league so far. Hall has really struggled while he was on the field, with only 1 sack in 8 total games played. And he's been out for every single game so far this year with a knee injury that he suffered last season. His availability, it's been about as bad as it could possibly be. I'm not sure he's even worth a 7th round pick at this point. But if, and this is the big if, but if the Niners can get Ohio State Mike Hall back, then they will have a true pass rushing threat on the inside of the D-line. I loved Hall's tape coming out of college, and I do think that there's still talent left to unlock with Mike Hall Jr. But if he's not worth a 7th round pick, then how would the 49ers trade for him? Well, by giving up a 5th rounder. But Brady, what do you mean? That makes no sense. Well, allow me to introduce you to my master plan. The 49ers should trade for Shedeur Sanders at the trade deadline. Now hear me out. They should send a 5th round pick to the Cleveland Browns for both Shedeur and Mike Hall. It is clear to me that Cleveland didn't want Shedeur in the first place. They drafted Dillon Gabriel over him. They are playing Dillon Gabriel over him. Feels like Shedeur was a PR pull for the Browns. And it's clear that the Browns are selling, right? They've made 2 trades already this week, trading away Joe Flacco and Greg Newsome. So giving up 2 guys that, frankly, they don't seem to want for a 5th round pick, it's pretty good value, in all honesty. And as for the 49ers, they get the high potential defensive tackle in Hall, but they also get their future backup in Shedeur. We've talked at length about how well Mac Jones is playing this year, right? And how he's a product of the Kyle Shanahan QB rehab facility. So why not be proactive and get your next project in here early? I don't really believe in Adrian Martinez to be that sort of Mac Jones level backup. Shedeur, though, he's got a lot of learning to do, right? But there's no doubt he's a talented guy. He's got a nice arm, not great, but nice, and shows off some pretty sweet accuracy and touch at times. He's confident, and for good reason. He should have gotten drafted a lot higher than he did. If Shanahan can fix his biggest issue, which is holding on to the ball too long, then I think Shedeur can actually be maximized as an NFL player, which I don't think he can be if he's sitting on the bench in Cleveland. Shedeur needs to learn how to play on time and avoid these massive negative plays that you see all over his Colorado tape, right? And if anyone can teach him how to do that and how to play in structure, it's Kyle Shanahan. So what do you think? Should the Niners go get Myles Murphy or Jackson Powers-Johnson or Mike Hall or Shedeur Sanders? Let me know down below. Leave a comment, leave a like, and let me know if there's any topics that you'd like to see me cover. Thank you all for watching, and subscribe for 49ers videos 5 days a week. I'm Brady Grustas, at GrustasBrady on X. This has been Niners Now, and I'll see you tomorrow.